Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here, checking out the series. Of course, you know what to do if you like what you see, what you hear. Hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, new one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover those new ones, any of the usual podcast places, including Spotify and Apple Podcast, at NPR, WFPK.org, YouTube for the video versions, or again, anywhere you get your podcast from. You can subscribe to Kyle Meredith with. And that's me, Kyle Meredith. Today, we're going to be talking about the Apple TV Plus series called Lessons in Chemistry, starring Brie Larson. Now, my guest today is the food consultant and chef on the show, Courtney McBroom. The show itself, Brie's character, Elizabeth Zott, it's set in the 1950s, and she's a chemist. She has to go up against a male-dominated world, not just in the field, but in society around that time. She eventually makes her way into hosting a TV show to use her chemist skills. Now, the show itself is about so much more than that, but the fact that it does have a lot to do with food is why it's so fun that I get to talk with Courtney McBroom today. Now, Courtney, again, is an author. She's got a great site called Ruined Table that you should check out. And we get to talk about how she got involved with this and what it means to be a consultant on a show like this. We'll talk about the food of the 1950s and working with Brie and how good a cook she might be, and so much more. In fact, let's just jump into this. We're talking lessons in chemistry. It's Kyle Meredith with Courtney McBroom.
Hi, Kyle. How are you?
I'm well. It's a pleasure to meet you on here.
Pleasure to meet you as well, sir.
Yeah. And as we talk about lessons in chemistry and this fantastic season with all the food that's a part of it, and I guess maybe we start there. Sort of the ground rules, the clarification. You are a consultant and for the food.
Yes.
What all did that entail?
So much. So I worked directly with the writers, the directors, the producers, and with Brie specifically to think what do we want the food to look like? How did we want the food to help tell the story of Lessons in Chemistry? We knew we wanted people to be hungry when they watched the show. We knew we wanted to honor Elizabeth and who she is as a person. So we very much made the decision that, okay, Elizabeth is a woman of her time. She's a woman of the 50s, but she's also very much a woman ahead of her time. So we took some liberties with the food. She made a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily from the 50s, but more had a nod to the 50s. But she uses fresh ingredients. She makes everything from scratch, things of that nature.
Yeah. When I think about the 50s, and you're probably much more the expert on this, but I don't think of that as a decade that was really known for taste. And I'm only thinking about the cookbooks that I've seen in the past. Like what did define that era?
Well, I have a bunch of those cookbooks. I'm obsessed with vintage cookbooks from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I think, the food from that era, a lot of it was for convenience, right? A lot of it was canned foods. There was a lot of gelatin involved, a lot of Jell-O salads, which are very interesting to look at, but I don't know if they're as interesting to eat. So there's a lot to work with within the 1950s aura of food, for sure.
Yeah. You said working with Brie, personally on this, I guess I'm asking you to speak for her a little bit here. Like, how good a cook was she to become, what was that partnership like?
It was great. For Brie and I are really great friends to begin with. So that was easy to start. And then she's a great cook too. Like, she has cooked for me lots of times. She loves to be in the kitchen. She loves to eat delicious food. So that part of my job was really easier. I didn't have to tell her too much about how to hold a knife or how to slice a vegetable. She did great. And then for the really intricate stuff, it was actually my hands in the show doing the chopping and stuff. I was her hand double.
You've got that on your resume now.
Oh yeah. These are my money makers.
On the other side of this, of course, food, yes, and then the chemistry part. and seeing how Elizabeth and Brie's character comes, into the food side of it, how much of a role does that play in yours? I mean, how did you come into food? Was it from the science thing? Do you use it like that, or was it much more of I don't know what the natural,
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of both. I'm classically trained as a baker, as a pastry chef, and so chemistry is in all forms of cooking, but it really plays a huge role in baking. So I'm always aware of the chemical processes that are happening in food. It helps you just be a better chef. But like Elizabeth took it to the limit as far as chemistry and food. But the cool thing about Elizabeth Zott as a character with cooking is she starts out and it's all about science. It's all about cooking with the head. And then her arc as a character, she learns to cook from the heart and to invite people into her life and to nourish them with her food before she was just cooking for herself. So that's a beautiful story.
I mean, we do see that, especially towards the, as it talks about the human connection being so much a part of this. And I think anytime I hear, especially when I watch food shows, that seems to always be a part of it. Like, you're talking about the era and how you kind of mix in and out of it, but how much of that goes into the thought, like what the food does have to represent? Because even in the bigger pictures, as we're talking about the oppression that happened in that era, like how much of that interplays with just what you all are talking about with what to cook?
We really looked at food as its own character in the show, and it facilitated so many of the connections that happen, like the lasagna. Like Elizabeth wouldn't have met Calvin if it weren't for this. Well, she would have met him, but grown a relationship with him if it weren't for the lasagna. Same thing with the chicken pot pie. She wouldn't have had supper at 6 without that. So that's how we treated the food. It's like the food is its own character, and how do we pay homage to that? How do we have it look really delicious, taste delicious? Because at the end of the day, it is being eaten in the show too. So that was the main focus, and I think we did a really good job.
Is there a trick then to shooting it?
That you would have to ask the camera operators. But I mean, yes, I mean, the main trick is make the food look delicious, and then it will be really easy to shoot it and it'll be delicious. And like there were no tricks being used. Like occasionally we would like spritz some water on stuff or like brush it with some oil, but like the food is like made with love. And as you would make, like if I would have happily served all of that food to anyone and be like, here, I made this for you. So
I love knowing that about it, because you're right. Every single time it's on the screen. Yeah. Somewhere in the back of my mind's like, I'd eat that.
Yeah.
I'd love to eat that.
Yeah.
For you, again, thinking about the decades, is the 50s, whatever, 80s, is there a decade that you've kind of got a favorite era when it comes to food?
It changes from time to time. I think I like the 80s. I'm into the 80s now. I feel like that was a wild time in general to be alive. I'm a child of the 80s. And yeah, everything was just bigger and louder and like weird. And I don't know. I love the 80s.
Yeah. Well, especially as I think about, I've got the music around. I mean, Prince and Bowie's over my shoulder.
I know. Maybe I'm like subliminally tuned into your poster. So I'm like, 80s. Yes, the 80s.
Well, because you have is it Ruin Table? Is that
yes, Ruin Table.
Yeah. Like I saw the video of the grunge one even, and like compliments on what you're doing with your dinner parties, because I think they look fantastic.
Thank you. Well, you gotta come to one day.
Gotta come to one day. Well, what you're doing in Lessons in Chemistry, I mean, this whole show and everybody that's involved, I've loved watching it so much, and it's got important lessons out there, but especially what you're doing with the food. Congratulations on being such a big part of this series.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have been a part of it. It was great.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.